Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective, and today we are finishing off the series on the Helix. That is right. I have now the opportunity to take a look at the Helix 2 second generation, pretty much the two main configurations that they came in. So we're going to be spending a little bit of time today going over the different components, what changed, what was for the better, what I kind of missed from the first gen, and whether or not this is a good second-hand purchase in the year 2019. So the first place I actually want to start is the keyboard docks. There were two, and neither one of them, from what I understood, unless they came bundled, were actually sold with the tablet itself. So we'll actually start over here with the Ultrabook Dock. There was one also called the Ultrabook Pro, and I think you'll see why in a second. So this dock right here has one USB port on the left-hand side, nothing along the back, and then a pen storage slot if you had the pen. And the pen did come with these, however, since these are second-hand, the pen is long since gone. And that is it. There is one USB port, and that is all. Now, the latching mechanism that is used here is friction fit, from as far as I can tell. So you just move it out, and then here are a series of tabs that I am not confident in whatsoever to hold this machine securely during transport. The fact that I can even just hold it and I can see a separation there does not fill me with any confidence whatsoever. Anyway, enough about that. So the tablet can be slid forward and removed just like that. And then we are left with a very simple but tasteful ThinkPad keyboard with the appropriate ThinkPad keyboard travel and a very, very clicky, in the appropriate places, trackpad. This trackpad's actually alright. The things that you'll probably notice right away is the absence of track point, and there is no secondary battery in this, so it is very, very light, and that's got some pros and cons. You'll notice that there are a couple of pins back here, and that's what makes the connection with the actual tablet itself. So how you use this is you take the tablet and you essentially wedge it into place right there, and that's it. This is the only angle you're going to get. If you don't like that angle, then you bought the wrong keyboard dock. However, the angle is appropriate for most tasks, which is good enough. There is nothing that secures it in there, so if somebody bumps this, it's coming forward and probably on your hands. So just keep that in mind, that it is not held together in any way to the tablet component. So that is the basic dock. It is, if you're looking for them used, I would try to encourage you to track down something a bit more like this. This is the Pro Dock, and this will look immediately more familiar to those of us that have looked at the first generation Helix. Along this side we have absolutely nothing. Along the back we have charging, USB, and mini DisplayPort. And of course we've got our Kensington lock, which on a two-in-one like this, I don't entirely know the value of that, if you think about it hard enough. And then that's pretty much it. Now the nice thing about this unit is it has not only the track point, it has the much better button configuration, and it also has a battery on the inside, 26 watt hours to be exact. And that ends up being a significant percentage of the 35 watt hours that's available in the tablet component. Of course, we would expect nothing but quality here, and that's exactly what we get. The key travel on this is identical to the other keyboards, so if you're just typing, you don't need the track point, you don't need the second battery. I guess you could go with that one. I still wouldn't. The release mechanism is found in the same place as it was the last time. However, I don't like this release mechanism as much, and here's why. With the other model, you could literally just push it in with one finger and lift the tablet and it would detach, and it's not quite that simple. So what I tend to find myself doing is putting my palm here and pressing down on the tab and then just yanking the tablet straight off. The good news is that the tablet can still be taken, rotated around, put on the opposite way, and folded down so you can get more of a folio experience and take advantage of both of those batteries, which is, again, a little convenient. The only other thing that I would kind of hold out as being perhaps a little different is it could just be my memory of it, but I find that the wobble between the screen and the base where you attach the keyboard to is considerably more flexible, and I don't know if that's done by design to help durability. So if somebody bumps it, if something breaks, it's not the end of the world, but at the same time I feel like these tabs were higher and did their job a little better on the original machine. And your angle goes about the same distance back as your standard dock did. One more note about this particular keyboard base is if you are looking to get this running on, say, a Windows 10 machine, there are a series of steps that you are probably going to have to take to ensure that it functions properly. And you'll know if you're having this problem if the keyboard works and the track point and the trackpad do not. What you actually need to do is 2 steps. First, you need to update the firmware to the keyboard, and I'll leave a link to where you can do that in the description down below. And then you also need to do a registry patch, which thankfully Lenovo themselves provide, so you don't need to scour the internet for a little, perhaps dubious means of fixing it. You install all of that, you reboot it, and you should have access to not only the track point, the trackpad, and then a working keyboard as well, which is a very nice set of functions indeed. It's also worth pointing out that the Pro version does have a backlight, whereas your regular version does not. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of the hardware features of the tablet. The one that we'll be exploring right away is actually kind of the higher end tablet. So this particular one is an M5Y71, and it was 8 gigabytes of RAM from the factory. Both of those things are soldered on, you're not replacing them. On the inside it is using an M2 SATA hard drive that can be swapped out, but you'll have to open the case, and these are always been a little fun to open. Of course, I'll always leave the maintenance manual in the description for your perusal. But just so you know, that's really the only thing you're going in here unless you really know your stuff and you're fixing broken components. That being said, on the front of the display, we have a capacitive touch Windows Home button, and we have a 2 megapixel user-facing camera. On the back, we have a 5 megapixel camera in the corner surrounded by that red bezel. And this particular unit along the top has this bar. Now, if you see a bar like this, then that means that it is probably an LTE model and comes with the SIM card slot. And we can actually fact check that by looking at this corner down here and seeing that it does call for a SIM card. Speaking on the back, we do have a fingerprint reader built into the rear of the chassis. And then all of our ports, rather than being located along the bottom, which I have to admit I do kind of miss, I thought that was kind of neat, they are behind these little doors. So we've got a headphone microphone combo jack, a volume rocker. Under this door is our micro SD as well as our SIM card slot. Right there. And I can just tell by feeling those that you're probably going to find these often with those missing. Under here we have USB. We do have what appears to be a very small micro HDMI. And on the other side is power. But that is really it for ports, and the only difference that you'll note on the non-LTE model is it has no bar across the top, and it has no mention of it here. So one of the other changes that was made to the Helix 2 was how it was cooled. Now, it is using what is called a vapor chamber. So in other words, it has no moving parts, it's passively cooled, which is a large change from what they were doing with the original, with its fan system in the dock, as well as in the tablet. Now, the change in this is due to the lower wattage CPU that they're now running in these, which, you know what, is actually quick enough. I was a little bit concerned that the performance hit would be noticeable and unfortunate, but you also need to keep in mind that this newer version of Intel CPU is also running a higher version of the Intel HD graphics, a 5300 as opposed to an older 4000. So there is no distinct overarching winner in terms of which one can kind of bench the best. I did see some results that claimed that the i7 older Gen 1s were about 20% faster on certain tasks, but it wasn't an overall clear case winner. So once we're booted into Windows, which doesn't take too terribly long at all, I just wanted to illustrate some of the uses here. So with the simple dock, if we just go ahead and drop it in, it instantaneously detects the mouse, which is excellent. And that is one thing I will say, is that this thing, even though it's simple, it is very fast, it makes the connection, and it is immediately usable for all the things that you need it to do. Conversely, or should I say similarly, if we go over here and drop it on the other dock, it connects beautifully. We can also see that we've got 2 batteries present and currently charging. And our typing experience and everything here works just as well. We've got track point operating as it should. We have our touchpad working, and thank goodness we have our touchpad actually working with Windows gestures out of the box, which is always a plus, especially if you've been using a machine that has them and you go from one that doesn't. And I would say they're very sensitive and appropriate for the size of trackpad that you have to work with. And of course, having physical buttons is also a joy as well at the top for the track point. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you are in the market for a detachable Windows-style tablet and you don't want to break the bank, this really is an excellent option if you can find one used in your area that you can go and check out. And I would recommend that you do check any of these kinds of purchases that you are making, because you want to make sure that it is in good working physical condition. These tablets did have a rougher life, you can certainly tell. Not so much on this one, however, the other one has a couple of dents in the case. It is rather thin, so that is something that you do want to keep in mind when you are looking for these. And I would suggest that if you can, to try and track down one with the Pro Dock, because of the extra features that it has, like the additional battery, the more ports, the track point, the better touchpad setup, backlit keyboard. It is certainly worth it. And then of course the pen, which is not featured in this video, can be purchased very easily as a replacement. And that was probably the only thing that was really missing from this Pro setup, is a good place to store the pen. It is interesting that the cheaper keyboard actually has a slot for it, but I have a feeling that they needed that material to hold the screen up and then came up with the pen plan storage as an afterthought. At any rate, I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you learned something about the Helix 2, and that is all of the Helix devices that I'm aware of featured on this channel. With that being said, I hope that you enjoyed the content, and if you did, there are a couple of steps I'm going to put at the bottom of the screen here for you to consider. Please like the video, share it with any ThinkPad enthusiasts that you might know. If you're really interested in the content and want to see more, click subscribe. And if you want to be notified when that content is actually released, then make sure you're hitting that notification bell so those notifications appear in your notification feed. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time, and soon with more ThinkPad.